Yeah, basically, I think it's important to remember that the academy began to grow for different reasons, but there were people who did not have the background that the seminary wanted, and of course even JIR, HUC and JIR wanted. Not that I think that they were right. In many ways, I think they were wrong. But what really happened is that the academy began to draw people who had been a rabbi, either from a yeshiva background and so on, but who did not have the legitimacy. That's the best word, legitimacy, to be called a rabbi. And most of the people, not most, but almost knows, excuse me, I'll correct that. It's almost the majority of the people who had come the same time as I came to the academy, they came from the seminary, from HUC, from JIR, different places. And they wanted legitimacy. In other words, that they would not be called a imitation rabbi or a second-rate rabbi. And I think I told you before that some of the people at the seminary suggested that I don't, excuse me, that I should not go to the academy because you'll always be known as a second-rater. And that's what scared me in some ways. It did. I not want to be a second-rater. But at the same time, I finally found that I wanted to be a recognized rabbi and accepted within rabbinic circles and within the Jewish community in general. Yeah, I think it's very important to remember that many of the students that came in those years, when I was there, when I was a student, wanted to gain a better position, earn more money, and more standing in the community. Not only as a rabbi, but also as a Jew. Some of them achieved it, some did not. I think of several people, I'm not going to name names, but basically I think you should know that Ira Eisenstein kicked out some people, and then he was kicked out because things began to fall apart. The one who saved the situation, I think I told you, was S. Michael Gelber, who had been refused by the seminary, or more particularly by the rabbinical assembly, that he was really for him it was a passing thing. He had a hobby of writing books about the Bible. He had a hobby about doing other things, which were very nice, but were not really particular in terms of helping the rabbi achieve his goal, at least his first or early goal. One of the things that I think you should be aware of, that despite what was said about the academy, people came to it because they felt most of the people that I knew there, some of whom have gone on to Olam Haba, the world to come, really were not able to take it. And those people left, but some remained and wanted to remain. Again, Gelber came in, and because of his money and his fact that he had never become a rabbi himself, he was willing to support the academy with money, with with all kinds of statements, and he was able to speak openly to everybody and control the system so that it would not get out of hand. It had gotten out of hand even before Eisenstein because of the one particular rabbi who became the controller. We would call it the executive director today. But he was the one who controlled it. And he had I don't know if you ever knew his book, The Failure of the American Rabbi. That was the name of the book. I have it here. You're willing, you can borrow it and quote from it. But he really did that book using one particular Reform rabbi who was known at that time as, of course, Newman, Rabbi Newman. He felt that he was the real phony. In many ways he was, but he had power. So they had to get past that, and that was a very difficult period, and that was the early days that all of you probably know about from hearsay. But it was hard. But the academy survived because there was, I think, a real need for it for people who did not know what they wanted at the time. So they accepted the limitations of money, the limitations. There were hardly any placement. The rabbis from the seminary got placement. Matter of fact, they're promised placements for the rest of their life. But the academy, because it was second rate, was held in, fear. The fact is that you got past that stage within the Jewish community. Maybe, perhaps, obviously, the one place that has not achieved that great status is the HUC, Hebrew Union College. And everybody knows it. This I'm not sharing a secret. HUC, Hebrew Union College, JIR's double name, interviewed me, but it was already known that I was from the academy. This is years ago, and they said, he's not good, he's not recognized, etc., etc. Therefore, they said, we're not going to accept you. And that's what happened to me. So Michael Gelber, when I told him that, he said, look, you can come back to the academy because the academy is going to grow, the academy is going to be valid, and the academy will be recognized as a legitimate, I emphasize the word legitimate school, and you can go from there. The main professors that the academy had at the time, before the change, was Max Kadushin, Dr. Max Kadushin. He was a professor at the seminary, but he also got himself into trouble and had to be put in a pigeonhole because it was the seminary president, the JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary president, who did a review of the book that Dr. Kadushin had written called The Rabbinic Mind. You may, I'm sure you know it. And the Rabbinic Mind was impressed me, and not only me, other people, that here was real scholarship. Here was real thing. The only problem was it was not that well written, because Kadushin was not such a great writer, but he was a thinker. And he had thoughts which influenced, I think, whole sectors of the conservative movement and certainly even the reform movement. But the fact of the matter is, and this is important, that the whole competition, and that's the word, the competition between two seminaries, namely HUC, Hebrew Union College, JIR on one hand, and the other being the academy, created a situation that really lent itself to misunderstanding and competition and, one objection after another. Now, when Ira Eisenstein came into the academy, he tried in his own way, he tried to create another version of the SAJ, that's the Society for the Advancement of Judaism, and it was, of course, the founding congregation of the Reconstructionist movement. But what happened over the years is that the Reconstructionist movement had answers that nobody wanted to hear anymore. What do I mean by that? That their interpretation of what is God, what is halakha, what is all these things that are so important in the history and development of Judaism in America, were just torn apart and sort of, in other words, belittled and dismissed as being unimportant.
Who else was there besides?
I'm sorry?
Who else was there besides Dr. Max Kadushin?
Well, there was Dr. Kadushin, there was Dr. Eisenstein. The rest were simply people, but I would use the term malamdim. A malamed was the old word for a teacher, but he wasn't really somebody recognized within the community. He was looked down upon. And Kedushin understood this very well, but he was not strong enough to do anything. One of his real problems was he lost his temper too easily. And I saw it many times in the class. If he thought you had come to the class unprepared, you were dismissed as being unimportant and should not be there.
Are there any other teachers you remember?
Yes. Well, some of them, there was one man, he was a German Jewish scholar, and he taught, we would call it Tanakh, Bible, but he did it in the old way. What do I mean by the old way? He learned, he studied in the what we would call today is, let me give you the term. In the English, it simply was that he would give his interpretation, but it really had no reality in the present world. It wasn't. It might have been something from way back when German scholarship, the old German scholarship, really dominated. And
Do you
still,
remember who he was?
right now I can't remember his name, but I'll think about it when we stop. After you leave, it'll come to me. And thank you.
How many people got a smicha with you? How many people? Were you the only one?
I was the only one. I was the only one, and it was not held anywhere except in the synagogue of, at that time, the school had passed. Eisenstein was no longer involved, and there was a scholar who's now gone, and the name will come to me after you talk about, although we can see it on the certificate. And those few people, including Gelber was there in the background because he was not the scholar, but he wanted to see the academy succeed. He really did. And that's why he poured the money in, and that's why, well, it wasn't that much money, but he did what he could.
So in 1968, you were the only ordinee from the academy.
That's correct. And then don't forget, it was called the Academy for Higher Jewish Learning, which really wasn't at that point. Okay. I hope I can read it. Okay, you want to take a picture of this? You can.
You can read it in what our is.
Well, okay, I'll read it for you. On one side, of course, is the Hebrew, and this side is the English. I'll read the English so you'll know what it's about. You want me to turn this, right?
Okay. Right there is good.
Okay, I
So
have
you
to.
can see it. That's fine.
Okay. Bet Midrash Elyon Lelimudei HaYahadut, the Academy for Higher Jewish Learning. The faculty and board, there was a board. It was a real board that she had created. Okay, the faculty and the board of the and trustees of the Academy for Jewish Religion.
For Jewish learning.
No.
Yeah, for Jewish learning.
Formerly known as.
Okay. I have.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
It says the faculty and the board of trustees of the Academy for Jewish Religion, formerly Academy for Higher Jewish Learning,
Right.
hereby certify that Herman Lester Cohen, having fulfilled the requirements for graduation in the rabbinical program, is hereby authorized to be a rabbi and teacher to the House of Israel. In the city of New York, May 14, 1968.
Oh, that
Can
was
you
a year
read-
after we got married. Okay, the more important.
Can you read who signed it? Can you read
Yes.
the signatures?
Yeah.
Turn it to you so you can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Some of these names I may not be. Oh yeah, Aharon Giat. He was a Yemenite Jew who had come to America to make some money, and like my father and many other people who had come from Israel, they, in order to make a living, they did what they could, namely teach a couple of hours in this school and a couple of hours in that school and so on. Aharon Giat was a Yemenite Jew, and he taught us Hebrew literature, and I learned a lot from him in the few hours that I had. Then, how is your reading? Better than mine?
Gelber is on there.
What's that?
Gelber is on there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. It's S. Michael Gelber or Shalom Michael Gelber. Signed it here.
Do you want me to help you?
It's very faded. Very faded.
Well, there are two. There is a faculty, and then here, it's B'Shem Rad. Oh, Vad Ha. Can you read this? I can't read it. It's too difficult. Here, you see where it is?
Beshem Va'ad Hanemanim,
Right.
the Board of Trustees.
Right.
So you have two signatures there. You have a Shimon Korzenik.
Yes, Simon Korzenik.
Yeah.
He was
and-
he wasn't the faculty, he was basically the
No,
board.
the board of trustees.
Right.
But the other one I cannot read. And there's also here Abraham Berger.
Abraham what?
Berger. One of your
Yeah.
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 And Mordechai, Eliezer Bar Binyamin, Moshe, and I don't understand the
All right,
last,
okay.
it's a Schaefer.
Yeah,
Schaefer. Abraham, someone Schaefer.
right.
Mordechai Eliezer Schaefer.
Okay. And there was very few, one of the most important signatures are missing. Rabbi Dr. Max Kedushin.
Right.
Here, this is a true story. His signature was valuable for the seminary. Dr. Max Kedushin, even though he had fought with the chancellor of the
Finkelstein?
whose grandson is now a rabbi here, so he made it. But Finkelstein did a review of his book, The Rabbinic Mind, and he wrote a review. I never saw it myself. It was one of the magazines, Judaism, or the conservative Judaism, I don't remember which one. But it was just very critical, super critical of Dr. Kedushin. The one thing that you could find today is poorly written, but not what he has in it. And it was his style was no good, and this was no good.
Rabbi Cohen, can I ask you?
Sure.
When you went into the academy, was pluralism then?
The what?
Pluralism.
Yes.
Was pluralism one of the goals of the academy?
Yes, it was. But to be honest with you, the academy at that time only attracted the people who had left either JIR, HUC. There were two separate schools at one time, but then of course they became together. And whole other people who had a very superficial contact with him. There were, for instance, one teacher that I had was one who taught us Yiddish. Learned Yiddish, but I don't think that ever. It was a woman, and she never came to sign it because it wasn't important to her. She had something else to teach that day, and whatever, I don't know. It was that kind of a situation.
Do you remember any of the students who were there?
Yes, I do, but some of them are not alive anymore. One who I was very, very close to, who was a dropout from HUC in Cincinnati, was a man by the name of Herbert Weiss. He was from Detroit. As a matter of fact, one summer I was traveling in that part of the world. He in the city that he lived it was not Cincinnati, it was Cleveland. So and then after that we became good friends. He left the rabbinate, as many of those guys did, even after they got their smicha. They did get this, this thing, and he became not a pawn. I was going to say pawnbroker. It's not. He became a salesman of jewelry and stocks.
Was that because it was no placement? The academy had no.
There was no real placement.
In the academy.
Right, and because there were no congregations that were connected. See, the most important thing I think you have to remember, if you're going to going to try to continue to help the academy grow, you've got to get congregations lined up to sign on the dotted line in that, that they'll not only recognize it, but to give money. That's the only reason the seminary keeps going. And the seminary is having trouble now because the conservative movement is falling apart. Go ahead.
After you got your smicha, where did you go?
Washington, D.C.
I went to say the whole sentence because
Okay.
they cannot hear me.
Right, I hear you. I understand. No, we had, my wife and I, we had just gotten married, and it was a place where this young lady knows because she lives there. And it was a town not far from here called, what was it, Gail? That's right, Somerset, New Jersey. And they had just built, the congregation just had built a new building. That's still there, and I mean, and it's grown, of course, since then. And they gave us a house. The house was just falling apart. Water that froze, when we went to use it in the winter time. As a matter of fact, what is very interesting is what happened the day of the dedication of the building, because I came with the dedication. And why? Because they had just finished, obviously, the building and painting and so on. And it was an outdoor thing, a ceremony in the summer. It was very hot and humid that day. It was in early August, I believe. I forget, maybe and it took like a total of 5 hours from 2 p.m. to almost 7 p.m. to get through all the speakers they had lined. The bank, this company that had given them some money, all of that. Everybody had the right to speak, and they spoke. I was the last one on the agenda. I only mention this because it's really a true story, but it's also one that will make you laugh, I think, or remember and laugh. All of them spoke, and they spoke a lot of long words. Finally, they came. Now we call on Rabbi Chaim Cohen. Well, they knew me as Rabbi Herman Cohen, to come now to speak. I was the last speaker, and because everything had been, what do you do after everybody else has spoken? I had a whole speech that I had written. Really. I took it out, but then I looked at it, and I looked at the crowd, and I saw they were sweating, and they were tired, and I was tired. And I simply folded the sermon, put it back in my pocket, and I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to give you the sermon I wrote. I think we've heard enough. And I think we will remember all this very, very much." And of course, I got a big applause for shutting up. So I'll never forget this story, but it happened. And then the most important thing, everybody, got up, started moving to their cars, started leaving. And that was the end of it. And then, just as the last few people were in the parking lot, and it was not a it had not been, you know,
Built.
not built, just it was a field, you know. So a man comes over to me, not a Jewish man, but a man, a farmer, who had lived in that area all his life. And he said, comes up to me, shakes my hand. He's very polite. He was a goy, a non-Jew. And he says, Rabbi, I want you to know you have done a mitzvah. He knew the word mitzvah. I said, what do you mean a mitzvah? What's the mitzvah I did? I didn't give my speech. I didn't do this. It's the people who hear, they did it. So he said, on the very spot where you have built your synagogue, he didn't intend, but he watched it as a young boy actually. The Ku Klux Klan had lit the cross and burnt it. That was the sign, no black people, no Jews will be allowed here. And now you have created. I can't help but thinking now, but sorry. The Ku Klux Klan would come back to get rid of us. But of course, that never happened. And even though we left after 1 year, from there we went to Washington, D.C., my wife and I, because I just, you know, it was just not a good situation we had just gotten married and we wanted to build a family and all the rest of it, which we have done. I'm sorry that I have to say it.
We'll give you a little bit of time, Rabbi Cohen.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
don't be sorry. It's hard. It's hard to go back to those memories.
Yeah.
Very hard. But I'm so glad you're doing it.
Well.
Have some water and a deep breath.
Yeah. I don't know if you don't want any more. You know, the kind of problems we had after all that is what you have in any growing congregation, and this doesn't go, and that doesn't go. And I always went back in my mind, and you know, said, what would have happened had I graduated from JTS instead of the academy? Graduating from the academy was tough because I had no placement. Luckily, there was two people in the rabbinical assembly who kind of saw that I was not a phony, because I didn't want to become because we had too many phonies in the academy at that time, and Gil Epstein, who's now dead, was in charge of placement, and whenever he could, he would always turn to me and says, Herman, don't go there, referring to that congregation or to that. Go there. They will not examine you on whether you are a JTS graduate or an academy graduate or HUC graduate, anything. They want a rabbi. They want somebody to be kind to them in their troubles. There were times when I just could not do it, but luckily I have a very good mate, Rhoda. Rhoda, she has struggled more than I have, and she became a gifted person in her own right. So, and we have 3 good kids. We have 6 grandchildren. All of them go to day school, one either yeshiva or some kind of Jewish day school, and we also spend time in Israel as much as we can, and our children go as frequently as they can with their children to Israel. And I think that that is a very important part of it, that we have to, when I listened today, what went on in North Africa today, you may not remember, but in North Africa, that was the place where many of the terrorists have come from. And now that has become now a staging area from North Africa to attack parts of the Middle East. They haven't done it to Israel because Israel has a very strong army now. But we're still living in a world full of hate.
Indeed. What are your connections to AJR today?
Well, it's really not been much because I've been sick. I've been for the last 3 or 4 months, with a, what did I say? I had a stroke. That's what it was. And actually the stroke started 5 years ago. It started to get better, but then it started to kind of relapse. So I have trouble now, and that's why I have to use the walker and all that. But I have a good wife, and I have good people around me who help me, and we do the best we can. That's all.
So what are your connections with the academy? Do you have, how do you know Aura? What connections?
Well, Aura I only know through her father. Her father was a friend of mine, and he has always been kind, not only because of the fact that I was a rabbi, but simply because I went to the academy, and he knows the difficulties the academy had in trying to build itself and to create a school and a life for rabbis and teachers and cantors and others can live a decent life and in their ability to help others. That's all. I don't regret going to HUC, to yeshiva universities for social work, the MSW, and I think that getting the MSW helped me become. I think the word really would be help me to see that all of human beings have troubles and problems. And that's where rabbis come in. The main thing is that you've got to be careful in this day and age when everybody looks at what you have in terms of education, certificates, this, that, and that doesn't tell you the real essence of the man or the woman. That we are all human beings and we all have to deal with people's problems. And there are some who were not very good at it, and they dropped out or they changed. And there were some people in the academy that dropped out because they were not fit to go ahead and deal with people's problems. And there are the others that did, and they've gone on to succeed in terms of helping people, teaching them Torah, teaching them humanity, and all the things that go with that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
you, and thank you for your service.
Okay.
Your service to the
Thank you.
academy and to the Jewish community.
Yeah, for the Jewish community, they gave me the title Rabbi Doctor. I now have a doctorate for a number of years, which is also hanging on the road. But that's not the real thing. The main thing is the people you deal with, the people you work with, the people who know you and you know them. And until you manage that, all the titles don't mean a thing. It does. Titles are important. I know. I understand. You know, I don't go to somebody who does, you know, who calls himself a doctor, but is not a doctor.
So who,
Oh.
who was the dean of the academy when you were there?
It was essentially the chief rabbi of Rodef Sholem in New York, in Manhattan, and that was he was the person who set the. I remember I told you that Michael Gelber wrote a book that was kind of silly in some ways, but he wrote it almost like a little novella called "The Failure of the American Rabbi," and he used Rabbi Newman of Rodef Sholem.
So he was
the-
Rabbi Newman was the dean when you
Yeah,
were
he was, but he was a rabbi who essentially belonged to another world and to another time. And I think that was one of the reasons he finally retired. And you know, he did die, but at least what was really important, that the seminary, the JTS, became at least the symbol of what Jews could do in this country for themselves. Same is true with the other academies, you know, the Hebrew Union College. For a while, I think probably the SAJ, you know, was that, but I don't think that's relative now. Somebody once described the conservative, not the conservative, but the Reconstructionist movement. It's a movement that says what the questions are, but not the answers. That's how somebody described it.